Hello, and welcome to Seeking Heaven, the Near-Death Experience and Other Phenomena. I'm your host, Tamara Caulder Richardson, a six-time near-death experiencer, as well as a multiple spiritually transformative experiencer, medium, and channeler. Welcome to the Seeking Heaven channel. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe below. Share, tell your friends, like, and make comments. I do try to respond to all the comments that I can, as well as consider being a member. So I'm very, very excited about our guest today. I tell you, this person I have so much respect for. Before I bring them on, I do want to read to go through their bio because it's so extensive and so impressive. I really don't want to leave anything out. And that would be Dr. Yvonne Kason. Now, she is a multiple spiritually transformative experiencer, as well as coining that term. So we have the person who actually coined that term here, which is very exciting, as well as she is one herself. And she is a retired medical doctor and a psychotherapist. She is also the co-founder of Spiritual Awakenings International with the other co-founders, Robert Bear, and she is the president. He is the vice president. And I want to tell you a little bit about Dr. Kason before we bring her on. Now, I did mention that she was a family physician as well as a psychotherapist who has extensively studied the areas of NDEs, STEs, Kundalini awakenings, but she is an internationally renowned medical expert on near-death experiences, Kundalini awakening, spiritually transformed experiences. She has well over 40 years experiences researching these particular topics, as well as counseling people with these. And I know she's even counseled me on mine that I have learned so much just being a part of Spiritual Awakenings International through her research. She's also had a very powerful Kundalini awakening in 1976, as well as a near-death experience in 1979, where she was in a medvac plane and it crashed. You've got to get her book, Touched by the Light. It's an amazing story in there. Many experiences in there, but this is in there as well. She began to research NDEs and other spiritual experiences after that. In 1990, she became the first Canadian medical doctor to specialize in her medical practice and research and counseling of patients with these diverse types of STEs. She was the first person to coin this phrase, spiritually transformative experiences, as well as STEs in 1994 from her book, A Further Shore, as well as she's had these experiences herself, multiple NDEs and STEs. She did have some in her childhood, and I know today we're going to be talking about childhood STEs, which does include that. So she is quite a pioneer in the industry of spiritually transformative experiences, as well as near-death experiences. She has multiple books that are published that you do need to check out. That I absolutely love her book, Touched by the Light. You do need to get that. And she's involved with so many other associations with Kundalini Awakening. She was I know she's very involved with setting up other groups and so forth. But I want to bring her on and talk about her greatest love right now, which is she's the president of Spiritual Awakening International. And there's a conference coming up.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hi. Look, we have so to let everyone know that the Seeking Heaven channel is also an affiliate, I always get it wrong, group or member.
Group.
Thank you. I always get that wrong. I have a mental block. Group where the Spiritual Awakenings International has affiliate groups, and the Seeking Heaven channel is one of them. There's several, and this has been a fabulous group to be a part of. I'm also on the advisory board, so just to kind of put that out there and the marketing share, so people want to know. I'm just, yes, I'm a fan. Of course, I'm a fan of Spiritual Awakenings International. I wouldn't be involved if I wasn't. I think it's a terrific group for experiencers of all kinds and people that are interested in these topics. So today, I know we're going to be talking about the childhood experiences, but what I think came up, Dr. Kason, with all of this is because you decided to have a childhood STE panel, and tell us how that came about, because we thought, well, we should talk about this.
Right. Right. Well, Spiritual Awakenings International is having our second conference. It's our second birthday. So to celebrate our second birthday, we're having an online conference June 11th and June 12th. That's a Saturday and Sunday, just about 1 month from now. And when we were thinking and brainstorming, when I was
Right.
brainstorming about it, I thought, a topic that needs to be talked about is childhood experiencers, people who've had STE experiences in
Right.
their childhood. Because I personally had two near-death experiences as a child. And I
Wow.
didn't realize that for most of my life. And even having adult STEs and NDEs, you take a while till you really figure out what they are. But with childhood experiences, you might not figure it out till 30, 40, or 50 years later. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I thought it was really important to talk about childhood experiences at the conference. But the other reason I thought it was important is that children are curious, that
Yeah.
children are more knowledgeable about STEs that's the short for spiritually transformative experiences, STEs. Children today are much more knowledgeable about STEs and near-death experiences than we were when we were little because of TV and the media. Like movies like Star
True.
Wars, for example, there's near-death experiences, there's all sorts of STEs, and then they have all the children's shows, where there's telepathy happening and communicating with dead spirits. So children are also having these experiences, and right now, today, and their parents might be wondering, gee, is it possible that my children are having these experiences? So I also want parents to hear about, yes, lots of people have STEs in their childhood, and so that maybe they'll feel more comfortable in maybe talking to their children about some of their experiences. So I have sort of a double reason why I thought it was so important that we have a panel on childhood experiencers.
Well, it's true, and I think we've talked about this before. That as a child, this is something really not being talked about. Childhood STEs or NDEs, which is part of that, it's not really talked about, and it will help parents to better understand if they feel like their child has gone through something similar or if they have. So this is something I don't know why it's not talked about very much, but I think it's very fascinating.
Well, this is part of what Spiritual Awakenings International is trying to do is really expand what is being talked about all types of spiritually transformative experiences. But with and NDEs, near-death experiences particularly, there are two very fascinating topics that we're going to be talking about at the conference. So one is, as I mentioned, the childhood experiencers. But the other fascinating thing we're going to talk about that, again, is rarely talked about, if ever, is post-traumatic stress and near-death experiences, how one can have both. One can have post-traumatic stress from the trauma
Yeah.
of whatever caused the NDE, the accident that caused the NDE, in addition to having the out-of-body and or white light experience. And some people seem to think it's either one or the other. You couldn't possibly have post-traumatic stress if you went up into the light, but guess what? You can have both. So that's actually one of the things that I'm going to be talking about at the conference. But in our childhood experiencers panel, you, Tamara, are going to be one of our presenters.
True.
So all of Tamara's fans out there, you want to hear Tamara talk about her childhood experiences, come
Yeah.
to the Spiritual Awakenings International Conference, and she's going to be talking about her childhood experiences, the joys and the challenges.
Yes, and I'm going to be talking about things that I haven't talked about before, which I feel safe. I have talked about things I have not talked about before with spiritual SAI.
Awakenings International.
Yeah, the Spiritual Awakenings International, and I was trying to think, when did I talk last? So it was on the, if you look under the website, spiritualawakeningsinternational.org, I did a talk in December and talked about things I have never talked about before. And then last at the conference, there was a segment on STs. I talked about a different facet. And so this will be a different facet. This will be new information. And I think it will be interesting. So maybe before we dive into it, because I want to, also hear about yours and maybe some of your case studies with your clients along the way. And then I guess I could give a little bit of a teaser of some of the things I may talk about. But talk about what would be, if you or a person listening, or a parent, what would be an example of a childhood spiritually transformative experience?
Well, basically, children can have basically any spiritually transformative experiences, just like adults do. But I'll talk about what some of the common ones are. Number one, the common in terms of what people have told me about. Uh, One of the common ones is young children remembering past lives, that they might talk about things or have affinities for foods, or recognize things that they shouldn't be able to recognize from this life. It seems that they are carrying memories with them from a past life, and sometimes those memories will fade by the time they are 3 or 4. So that happens with many young children. Another thing is speaking with spirit beings, whether that is being able to communicate with an invisible friend, or an angel, or a spirit guide, or fairies, or elves, or little people. That sometimes youngsters will, they'll be talking with, there seems to be nobody there that the adult could see, but really they're seeing beings on the other side. Now, many of these things I think have to do with children being very open to the other side when they're first born, some children more than others, and this tends to shut down as they get a bit older. But then you have the opposite happening, where children have some sort of an experience. Say, let's talk about a childhood near-death experience, and that opens them to these types of experiences. And children can have near-death experiences related to everything that adults do, like a car accident, an accident on the playground, a really bad sickness where they have a high fever, that any trauma or sickness, that the operations that go bad, reactions to drugs and anesthetics, that could cause a near-death experience in a child. And the thing about children, though, is that children, particularly at a young age, don't have any sort of yardstick to measure what is normal and what is paranormal. So
Right.
they often have no idea that it's, quotes, paranormal to go out of body, or that it's paranormal to be talking to angels, or paranormal to see the spirit of grandpa who died last year. That it's just their experience. Then as children get a little bit older, they get taught by society that that's not normal. And then when that happens, they might start being scared of some of these things that when they were younger maybe didn't frighten them. But, oh, I'm seeing ghosts. Oh, that's scary. I'm scared of this. Whereas really the spirit did nothing to harm them. They're just open to seeing spirits.
Yeah, that's exactly, that's what a lot of that happened to me. So many different forms of what you just said, but I had no one to really talk to about this, or I didn't know it was a bad thing. I didn't know what was normal. I didn't know that it's considered bad or paranormal till later on, that I was discouraged to talk about these things, and I think it's mainly because people didn't understand, my parents or others around, the other adults. But yeah, I'm sure this is probably more common than most people even realize with kids.
And, I mean, I can talk about my two childhood near-death experiences, just
Yeah,
an example, if you'd
yeah,
like.
I
And
would love that. Yeah.
yeah, so my first child, what I now realize was my first childhood near-death experience happened when I was 5, in the summer before kindergarten. Now, I have to tell you, even though, as you said, I've been researching spiritually
Mhm.
transformative experiences for 40 years, that it was only about 3 or 4 years ago that I even realized that these childhood experiences were near-death experiences, because I had just as a child considered it normal that this is what everybody would experience in this situation. But when I analyzed them and looked at the criteria of near-death experiences and went, oh my goodness, this normal experience that I had is actually a near-death experience. So the first one happened when I was 5 years old, and I was traveling with my family in Europe, and we were on a train platform. Now, I was born and raised in Toronto, Canada, and we traveled by car. We did not travel by train. But in Europe, a lot of people travel by train. So as a 5-year-old, this was new and interesting for me, and I was looking around. And so I'm standing there on the platform with my parents, and I saw a station hand jump off the platform down onto the railway tracks, sort of run across the tracks, and then climb up on the platform on the other side. And I remember thinking, oh, that looks like fun. I'm going to do that too. And so I immediately started jumping down onto the railroad tracks. And then what happened was, all of a sudden, it was like time stood still. It was like my life was a motion picture, and it froze at the screen with me leaning over the platform. But my spirit lived on, and my consciousness lived on. And all of a sudden, I found myself maybe 20 feet or so higher, looking down, and I could see my little body about to jump on the train. It was all frozen, time had stopped. And from that perspective, looking that direction, I could see that a train was rushing into the station, and that I was jumping right in front of an oncoming train, and I was about to be hit by a train. You know, I was too young. I hadn't yet learned look both ways before you jump on the railway tracks. And you know what was interesting was, as I was up there, I realized, oh, I'm about to be hit by a train. I wasn't afraid at all. I felt completely peaceful, completely calm. I figured I was about to die. You know, I was about to be killed when I was going to be hit by a train. But there was no fear at all, just this incredible peace. And then all of a sudden, it was like the movie of my life started again. The pause released, and then a hand came from nowhere from the platform. Somebody grabbed me and pulled me back on the platform so that I was not hit by the train, and then the train
Wow.
whisked in front of me. Now, you know, my parents scolded me and blah, blah, blah. But again, as a child, I didn't know this was
Right.
unusual. I didn't know what to think of it. Actually, what I did think of it, because I started kindergarten that fall, and I had such clear memory of what, as a child, I thought I had been flying. I thought I had been flying that day. So I remember when I started kindergarten and I made some new friends, I said to my little new friend, you know what? I can fly. And this friend said, no, you can't. And I said, sure, I can. I'll prove it to you. So I remember this so clearly. I climbed up on the little fence in front of our house, and I spread out my arms, and I jumped out. And I really thought, because I could see it in my mind, that I was going to fly down the street, and I was going to show my little friend that I could fly. And I still remember I was so puzzled when I just fell to the ground, right? Because I couldn't figure out why I couldn't fly when I could so clearly remember flying that day, or what I thought was flying that day, when I was hit by the train, almost hit by the train. So I now realize that was an out of body experience,
Yeah.
and the peace and calm, and the time changing. These are all signs of a near death experience. So this was my first childhood near death experience, and it happened at the age of 5. And I don't think I told anybody about it, because it never occurred to me to talk about it. And besides, I didn't want my parents to start scolding me again about almost jumping in front of a train. So my second near death experience that I now realize was a near death experience happened when I had just turned 11, and I was not close to puberty yet. So I was really still a kid. Think of a 10-year-old. I just turned 11. My family had been involved in a very serious car accident. We were driving along the highway, and I think we had a flat at high speed, and the car swerved and went down a steep embankment, and then spun a few times. We were in a large station wagon. And back in those days, this was before seat belts. And I was flung into the back part among the suitcases, among the luggage. And I sustained a serious head injury. So I was 11. And I ended up being unconscious for 3 days from that head injury. And I've always remembered floating above the accident scene and looking down and seeing my father at the side of the road. And he was like, blood was dripping down his face because he had really bad lacerations on his face. And I remember him saying, my daughter, because they hadn't found me yet in the back of the car. The car was all crushed up. And I sometimes wonder if it's that sort of connection of love that brought my spirit above my father, that I witnessed him saying that. And he later on did confirm that he did say that, because he was looking and he saw they hadn't found me yet. So even though he was like critically injured, he was going, my daughter, my daughter.
Oh.
And then the next thing I remember is floating above. It's like my consciousness jumped, I guess, floating above once we were taken to the closest emergency department, that it was, I was above the examining room table in the emergency room, and there were two men, and I guess they were doctors, sort of huddled over my little body. I could see my little body lying on, I could still see the little outfit and the little skirt and everything that I was wearing lying on this little table. And it was as if the ceiling of the room had gone transparent, and I was up there. And as I looked down, I could also see the top of the lamp, and this big, round, circular, disc-shaped, metallic lamp. I was seeing it from a top-down perspective. Now I'm a doctor, and through my training, I know that is what lamps, surgical lamps, look like. And in the emergency room, they have these big surgical lamps. But when I was 11 years old, I had no idea that's what the lamps looked like in a hospital, over one of these tables in the emergency room. But so that's what I was seeing from the top-down perspective. And then my next memory, it seemed to jump again, was right when I woke up. So when I came out of the coma 3 days later, that I have really, really clear memory of waking up, looking around, where on earth am I? And I was in a little pediatric ward in a children's bed with the side rails out and IVs in my arm. I had to pee really bad, so I pulled out the lines. I climbed over the railing, and I started looking for a bathroom. And like 11, I didn't wear diapers. I'm not about to pee in my pants. And anyway, and then as I was paddling down the hall trying to find a bathroom, a nurse comes running out, you shouldn't be out of bed, blah blah blah. Anyway, interesting about this experience is that, again, I didn't know it was, quotes, paranormal. I thought probably everybody had that when they were unconscious for 3 days. I didn't know any better when I was 11 years old. How did I know that everybody didn't watch what was happening? I mean, to me, it never dawned on me to label it as paranormal. It was just what happened to me in the car accident. And I was able to see what happened afterwards when I was unconscious. But the after effect was really, really dramatic, which I now know is a classic near-death experience after effect, which was for almost a year afterwards, I could see ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
I could see spirits in my room, particularly at night. And I remember I was so scared. I said to I refused to sleep in my own bedroom. I made them move my bed into my younger sibling's bedroom so that I wouldn't be in a room by myself, because I was so scared. And I thought the house we had just moved. I thought the house we'd moved to was haunted, which maybe it was, but I didn't realize that it was me that had changed, that this was part of the psychic opening that happens after having had a childhood near-death experience. So those were my two childhood NDEs. And like I said, but I realized, like many other people who had near-death experiences, I didn't put 2 and 2 together till many years later to even realize these were childhood near-death experiences.
Yes. Now, do you see a difference when people that have had childhood near-death experiences, are they different than adults as far as in after effects or in any ways that you've noticed? Because you've done so much research on this.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an area that people are still looking at, but I can share what my personal
Sure.
experience has been is that, and what I've read in the research is that many childhood experiences, whether they be a near-death experience or mediumship experiences or after-death communications or past life memory, whatever it is, they tend to be less tainted by the cultural environment. You know that there's this innocence in childhood, so it's um, uh, not colored by is this a Christian experience or a Jewish experience or a Hindu experience or a Sikh experience or whatever. That it's just an experience, and that children are less likely to color it based on their particular culture or their particular upbringing. A second thing that researchers have noticed, and this is true that I have found this too, is that um, childhood experiences tend to have, if they're near death experiences, tend to have less features. So, out of body near death experiences are more common in children, although some children also will have the deeper near death experience where they go into the light. But they seem to be somehow a little simpler. And children, it seems like the other side knows exactly what children need. So
Yeah.
children will sometimes encounter beloved pets or animals that they feel safe with. Sometimes adults see a beloved pets in their near-death experiences, but it seems to be a little more common in children. Mhm.
That's beautiful. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I know that this panel was created to really cover some of these things and help people to better understand, because I think it just came up organically that it was at a meeting or whatever that many childhood STers, NDErs really had no one to talk to about this.
That's right, and even now, as adults, have no one to talk to who can resonate with what it was like to be having these experiences as a child, not knowing what they are, and certainly not having anybody to talk to. So, Tamara, why don't you tell
Yeah.
us a bit about yours?
Oh gosh, here's I do want to tell on you just a little bit. You touched my heart when I think I was what was I doing before I interviewed a year or more ago, year and a half ago when I first interviewed you, and before being involved with spiritually with SAI, and I didn't realize how many things that I encountered till I met you, and you recognized that and you saw that in me, and that has really widened my viewpoint on what I think about all this, because um, I hid so much of it for so long
Mhm.
that it was buried underneath there, because it's just I got used to doing it. I wasn't trying to be dishonest. It's just that it's just something I did and I just kind of swept it away. And I think it's really great now that people can have a conversation about
Right.
things like this and they can discuss it. Which reminds me, I do want to make a plug about the SAI sharing groups.
Mhm.
You mention that real quick, and then I'll go into some examples of mine, because that might be helpful to people too.
Yeah, we do various things at Spiritual Awakenings International. As we said at the top of the show, that we are having a conference coming up on June 11th and June 12th, Saturday, Sunday, where we have 30 speakers, including these great panels, including the Childhood STE Experiencers panel.
Yes.
But we also regularly, once a month on the first Saturday, not in June, but other months we do, we have what we call our Spiritual Awakenings International experiencers sharing circles. So they're free, they're online, and anybody around the world can come, and it's an opportunity to share your personal experiences in a supportive environment with other experiencers. It's not therapy, no counseling's being done. It's a safe place to
Mhm.
share with other experiencers who will understand. So some of you are childhood experiencers or adult experiencers, and you want an opportunity to share with like-minded people who know what you're talking about, then this is the safe harbor for you, Spiritual Awakenings International. We also have
Yes.
speaker events both in English and in Spanish.
Yes.
The Spanish events are the second Saturday of the month, and our English events are usually the third Saturday of the month.
Right.
But we made our conference the second Saturday of the month so that we wouldn't overlap with Father's Day. So
Oh, okay. Is that why? Okay, great. Yeah.
mhm.
And so don't forget, just real quick, to sign up if you're interested. It is free. I can't believe that you all are doing all of this for free, but they
We do.
donations are important though.
Yeah, we are donation based. We encourage people to make a donation if they're coming to our events, but it's free to come, it's free to register.
Absolutely. And I think that's amazing in itself. So getting back this childhood STEs, and then of course I had most of my NDEs uh, as a child. And so I didn't even realize my first one was anything. I didn't even have anything to label it. But I remember recalling not being born and watching my mother pregnant and not almost carrying me without going into detail, and the whole conversation and how much love I had and concern. I was looking at the room from all different viewpoints and outside, and yet being, I was in multiple places, and um, basically, it was a prenatal NDE. I didn't even know they existed, but I
Yep,
had,
they do.
I
Other people do in the womb. That's right.
and it was a severe injury. I've had a lot of head ones, but God's good because the head is okay, and I know you've had head injuries. God's
Yes.
good. And so, but that one, and I think that was a catalyst for a lot of the childhood STEs afterwards. Then I had the
It,
nail on
it,
the
it
head at
would
3,
be.
but
It would make you more susceptible. That's what we're discovering. Like me, I've had 5 near-death experiences. Having had one at the age of 5, it's like it opened the channels in my consciousness and made me more susceptible. And it probably did that for you. Your prenatal one made you more open. Mhm.
it did. And so, it how do I can't really remember being normal, and I didn't know it wasn't normal. I didn't know it was paranormal. I didn't know what it was. But when I did know, I was consciously aware that when I was 3 and I was playing and I had a nail go through my head, I knew this was something because not only did I have was just a spiritually transformative experience, but I began to have them all the time after that. And, I remember being in all different locations at the same time out of my body after that. I didn't feel any pain when I was out, only when I went back in, and I was forced out of my body, seeing all different directions, and then seeing beings of light on the stairs. And I do recall years ago reading the Danny and Brinkley book, the Save the Light and the Beings of Light. I said, wait, those beings of light, I recognize them. I didn't have a word for them.
Yeah, you finally had a word to call
I had a
them.
word and
Remember,
something
don't tell
also.
everybody everything. Just give them some teasers.
Okay. And so, but that was, that was some things that I saw in the incident. But afterwards, it was a regular thing to see uh, and ghosts and spirit people. And the reason it's like that commercial they have, I don't know if they have it in Canada between the ghost and the spirit person, but the ghosts were just a little sadder. The spirit people were people that I knew or knew as family or that were friendly. And so I didn't know, especially with the spirit people, I could see them. I didn't know that they seemed very friendly. I mean, I thought it was odd I would see them in my bedroom. I did.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
didn't understand that. That confused me, but they were friendly and I seemed to trust them. This was a normal way of living for me, and but they were solid to me.
Mhm, mhm.
They did not look different to me. I ask God, please, Lord, don't let me see them like that now, because it's, we have to go grocery shopping and do things, and we can't just see solid figures of spirit people everywhere. Unless it's necessary. I prefer to just hear them, because I would see them all the time and so forth. But yeah, that out of body experiences, some really in depth things. I'll give a couple examples of those. But that was regular. That was a regular thing, and apparently, I would go into deeper states of astral travel. One of the things that is so cute, I mean, this is not the story, but this is just a little tidbit. But one of the things that my mom would say, she hated to check on me at night when I was sleeping. And I would say, why? And she said, because I would sleep with my eyes rolled back behind my head, and all she would see is the white of my eyes. And I'm thinking, that is just weird. I bet that looked really creepy. She said it did. I was really out of it. So I was really busy traveling, because I think I found my way to travel with these
Mm-hmm.
experiences. And truth be known, I wanted more of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so a lot more of these experiences, I would see orbs. I would see orbs, colors in my room, orbs. I still see colors in my room. I feel them to be my angels. I see
Mm-hmm.
them as colors. They come in different ways. They've also sung to me. But this has never really stopped. And the other near-death experiences I've had enhance that. And I can go into more detail, like what happened after each one and the after effects. But I will tell you what's interesting on the Spiritual Awakenings International.org website. If you look at that, there's a lot of STE after effects. Matter of fact, everything you want to know about spiritual terms, it's really quite good. But one of the things that I noticed is sensitivity to light. And as a little kid, I would wear sunglasses everywhere I went, but I get like really cute ones with like little animals on it or something. And
Right.
my mom could not understand. She goes, "You have darker eyes. Why?" Because she had blue eyes. Why are they sensitive to light? And I was always very sensitive to light. And I was very sensitive to medicines, any kind of
Mm-hmm.
medicines that I took. And so this has been a learning process for me, because it's filled in a lot of the way I was in childhood. I understand this now, as
Mm-hmm.
these are some of the after effects just with children, and also batteries. I never understood. It's actually humorous. I have a literally a wooden bucket of all the watches I've gone through, and I kept going through watches, and then I would go through. I have another basket full of batteries that I would go through, and I just thought that they sure do make cheap watches these days. I just
You didn't realize your energy field was shorting out the watches. This is called electrical sensitivity syndrome. That's like me. I would burst light bulbs. I would pop light bulbs, and I thought, man, they make cheap light bulbs now. I didn't realize it was my energy popping my light bulbs all the time.
Oh my gosh, that is funny. I really thought that, actually not too, but a few years ago, I thought, my gosh, they make the cheapest batteries these days. I tell you the coolest thing as an adult, it was probably 8 years ago. And I was doing some spiritual work on a lady. She goes, Tamara, there's something going on, blah, 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 without going into the story. So I started ramping up my mojo, and I was bringing in the angels, Jesus. I was doing some spiritual work. And we were walking to her car. I said, before we do this, I said, let's go over here in a private area. And we were outdoors. And as we were walking, and as it happened, I said, it's me. I blew an entire street light, and including turned on all the buildings in a building. That was so cool. I was like, that's cool. I don't know how I did that, but I knew it was because it was the timing of it. And as soon as it happened, it was not even a second later, I said I did that. So I think this is all of our natural state, is to be able to interact with things a lot more than we are. But yeah, I do have to laugh. I'll have to actually, I should bring that for the big bucket of watches, because I really do have one. And I kept buying watches, and my husband's like, do you have a thing with watches? And I'm like, I just can't keep one. And so I don't wear watches now. And I haven't burned out a phone. I had to tell myself, stop doing this. And I just put a switch that turns it
Mhm.
off now. Like, I have to know what time things are. So I just mentally say no, and I turn a switch off.
Mhm, mhm. And some people fritz out microphones. Some people set off the alarm at the airport all the time. I, for example, always set it off. I'm ready for the body search. I go through and I'm ready for the body search. I just set it out. I don't have
Oh,
metal in my body, so but I set
oh
it
my
off.
gosh.
And so these are some of the interesting things. Some people
That's
fritz out
funny.
microphones. Some people will make computers go frizzy. Um, and it's called other, back when we used to have pay phones, I had a friend of mine who's an experiencer, and any coin he touched would not work in the phone. It would just like go reject, 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 reject. And
Oh,
I'd have to hold the energy of the coin and rub it and ground the energy until finally the coin would work in the
oh
phone.
my
And
gosh,
so
that's
this
so
is all for people who don't know, this is all one of the after effects of spiritually transformative
funny.
experiences that I talk about in my book, Touched by the
Yeah,
Light. And also it's listed on the Spiritual Awakenings
right.
International website in terms of physical after effects. There's a number of them, but this is one of the ones that can be fun sometimes, that electrical sensitivity syndrome.
Well, and I look back on it, it explains a lot of things, but it makes me laugh because of all the explanations that I attributed it to. And sometimes I've noticed that I'm very allergic and sensitive to things, and
Hmm.
other times other people could be like harshly affected, and it doesn't even bother me at all.
Interesting. Yeah. But both of those can happen as STE after effects. More commonly, it's the sensitivity that people find themselves much more sensitive to many different things. So they may be, and this is too important to realize too with children, that children might have these sensitivities because they've had, maybe a near death experience or some sort of STE awakening. So this could be sensitivity to foods, people getting
Yeah,
more food sensitivities and food allergies, or discovering they have to go gluten free, for example, or even sugar sensitivity. It can be sensitivity to chemicals, whether that be, chemicals in laundry detergent or chemicals in the environment, or
yeah,
yeah. Hmm.
I,
And then
yep,
scents, that like me, I have to have everything unperfumed, everything,
yep,
unperfumed,
yep. Me
because
too.
extreme sensitivity to sense, sensitivity to light, you mentioned already, but also sensitivity to sounds. And I mean, my hearing has become incredibly good. I go off the
Yeah.
scales on hearing tests. I hear so well. They say you hear things that are in the range for only dogs can
Dogs.
hear. Well, I can
Oh my
hear. And
god.
but that also that some sounds, it's just, oh, I have to get out of this environment. I can't
Yeah,
tolerate that sound. And then
right.
there was another one that oh, yes, electromagnetic fields. That not only do people who are experiencers sometimes with this electrical sensitivity syndrome, which is really electromagnetic sensitivity syndrome, does their energy field sort of fritz out electronic stuff, but you're sensitive to outside fields, like for example those high power electrical lines that some people they just, ooh, they feel it, it's uncomfortable, or
Yeah,
laser pointers going
yeah,
over their head, they feel it as a
yeah.
physical discomfort, that they are sensitive to those things. So and things like, full moon and astrological
All that.
sensitivities. So a sensitivity is just that the heightened sensitivity of the energy field of the person who's an experiencer. Mhm.
And I wanna add to that is that when other and get your feedback on it, when other, let's say, near-death experiencers, we'll just use that for now, are around other near-death experiencers, they usually can sense each other, and sometimes, like, I'll speak for myself, I've learned to kinda control it, but I will kinda feel, whoo, kinda high. It's like we're riding the same wavelength.
Well, in my experience, that's part of that sensitivity, that you're sensitive to other people's energy fields. And in my experience, in my research, I think it actually has to do with Kundalini awakening. That
Okay.
many people with, particularly with a white light near death experience, will have a Kundalini awakening. But I want to mention here, Kundalini awakenings are actually more common than near-death experiences in my research.
Okay.
So there are many people out there who are having Kundalini awakenings, and maybe they've never had a near-death experience, and they will have all of these symptoms that I just talked about, all of this
Okay.
sensitivity. But something that happens after you've had a Kundalini awakening, many people, and this has to do with your chakras opening, your energy centers, these sensitivities that you are sensitive to the energy fields of people around you. So it's not just electromagnetic energy fields, but actually the aura or the energy of people
Yes.
around you.
Yes.
So that if you're people will often become clairsentient, where they can actually sense or feel in their body. Sometimes they'll call themselves empaths, that they can feel in their own body what other people are feeling. Like if other people are angry, they might feel it in their consciousness is like a in their head. If other people are sad, they might feel it like as a heaviness in their heart. I mean, they'll get to learn how they're picking up on other people's feelings. And people who have this very strongly after Kundalini awakening, maybe with a near-death experience or maybe spontaneous or with meditation, they might have trouble going to crowded places like buses, subway stations, planes, because they pick up so much on other people's emotions. So that is, extreme clairsentience. And so similarly, if you're around somebody whose spiritual energy is awakened, who's had a Kundalini awakening, who's had mystical experiences, who's had, whether it's near death or not, that there's a change in their energy. And if you're sensitive, you can feel that. And I mean, when people have told
Yeah.
me that when I talk about my near death experiences, my adult ones where I went into the light, the mystical near death experiences, that they actually feel like a quickening. They feel like their consciousness is
Yeah.
raising as they're listening to me, because they're actually picking up on the vibration. Because when I'm talking about these mystical experiences, and remembering them, I start going back into it. My own consciousness raises, right? And people can pick up on that and they go, wow, I just felt lifted up by listening to that
Yeah.
story. So that is another type of sensitivity in yoga. In fact, they talk about darshan, which is uh, um, the blessing that one receives just by being in the presence of an advanced saint, that their vibration is so high that it brings that you're blessed just by being in that presence. For example, Jesus, people were healed just by touching the hem of his clothes. And that is a phenomenon that's understood in yoga, and we, to a lesser extent, because none of us is Jesus, but we experience that when we're around experiencers who've had powerful mystical experiences. Mhm.
Yes, and those are all very good points. And the other thing that you mentioned on the Spiritual Awakenings International.org website, which is really cool, one of the things under the STEs is you mentioned the sleep pattern disruption. And I was like blown away when I saw this. I know there are little things, but I just want to point this out. We haven't had a chance to really discuss this, but I would wake up most of my life at 3 a.m. Now,
Yeah, me too. Me too.
oh, really? Why
Yeah.
3 a.m.?
It's
Why?
just, it seems like your biorhythm has changed because you've had a Kundalini awakening at some point with your experiences. And this is like an after effect that was, I was doing my research, because I started researching Kundalini awakenings, is where I started with back in the early 90s. And that it was like one of these bizarre things I found out, just like people fritzing out light bulbs in computers, that and guess what? Everybody's waking up at 3 in the morning. I used to give talks, about Kundalini awakening to people that were interested in it. And I'd say, how many of you have problems with waking at 3 in the morning? And like 3/4 of the people in the audience would raise their hands, and they'd all look around and go, they couldn't believe that everybody else was raising their hands. They thought it was just them. So it's some sort of change in your biorhythms or your sleep cycles that happens after you've had an awakening.
Wow. It doesn't really do that so much these days, but I would say most of my life, and I actually had such problems, not really sleeping, but I would wake up and I would be sounds kind of corny, but I was awake.
Mhm.
I was awake, and I would have like a whole room full of people talking to me, and I'm like, how do you tell the world, please stop, thank you. And so I picked a career for a long time owning an ad agency that I could have flexible and strange hours because I wasn't getting sleep all the time. But
Mhm. Mhm.
I didn't tell the world that. I
Yeah.
tried to blend in, but yeah, it's not, most normal people cannot wake up every night at 3 AM.
Yeah, and I think it's just reassuring for experiencers to know they're not alone. It's something that happens to experiencers. Why? We really don't know why, but it's something that happens to a lot of experiencers. And then everybody finds their own way of dealing with it. I mean, when I was younger, and when I was writing my first book on STEs, I would get up and write because I was
Right.
a young mom at that time. And when I was awake, my son always wanted to help me write. Right? So middle of the night, 3 in the morning, he was sound asleep. So I actually could get some writing done without him helping me. And so I would use that time. Other people have told me they use it to pray or to
Yeah,
meditate.
yeah.
Other people simply get up and give themselves a beverage, or they'll read for a little while or whatever. But I think the important message I just want to get across is that it's normal. It's
Mhm.
part of sort of a biorhythm change that seems to happen in people after their spiritual awakening, particularly after Kundalini awakening. Mhm.
And can you explain, once someone has a Kundalini awakening and then or a near death experience type of thing, that why that so many, whether they're a childhood or not, whether that how does that work that they it's like now I expect spiritual experiences. If I don't have one in a month, I think something's wrong. Why is it that this is common? I actually learned that from you. You said that this is common. And then I started looking, I went, yeah, this is kind of how I live my life. Some bigger than others. So why is that? Is because we've opened that
Well, how
realm.
well, let me say two things. First off, having experiences since childhood happens to many people. Kundalini awakenings tend to happen when you're a bit older. That the Kundalini awakening generally would happen in your 20s or 30s or sometimes in your 40s. Whereas you can start having out of body experiences, mystical experiences, after dead communications, or mediumship experiences. They start happening in the womb and all through childhood. So I I I wonder.
Hmm.
I've of course have wondered, what's going on? Why is this happening? Are these happening to more people now? Has it always been going on? And in my own research, what I found was that yes, what I'm using a new term, spiritually transformative experiences, as the umbrella term, and near death experiences are one type of spiritually transformative experience, but they've been described for thousands of years.
That's
I mean, let's look at Jesus. He's an example, right? Of he could heal, he could communicate with the other side,
good.
and
Yeah.
he said that his disciples would be able to do what he is able to do. And some of his disciples, yes, had healing abilities. Saints along the ways have had healings abilities, mystical experiences, after death communications, all of the above. So I found, as I was researching, the yogic tradition had the best description for me. And in this book, a classic yogic book called the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which was actually written before Christ, it describes all the different kinds of
Yeah.
STEs. And it's like, just this is all normal, and it happens as part of your unfoldment and spiritual awakening of consciousness as you evolve lifetime after lifetime until you finally find your way home to God communion. I went, oh my goodness, that says it all. And that when you look in the different faiths, they have saints and mystics who've had STEs. So it's not just one faith or two faiths. This is a
Everybody.
universal human phenomenon. I look at it as the whole planet's going through a spiritual awakening right now. And
Exactly.
and I think we sort of have to, because the planet's in
Mhm.
a little
Yeah.
bit of a mess.
Oh
And
boy.
and so I think, although there's no statistics, it's really hard to prove, but I think more and more and more people are having spiritual awakenings, and they may be having different types of STEs. It's not all near death experiences. That's one type of STE that people are having, but it's all like signs of this expansion of consciousness and this quickening and this spiritual awakening that's happening on the planet. And I think it's
Um,
all part of the divine plan. I think it's all part of human evolution. They talk about the 9/10 of the brain that we're not using.
um,
Well, maybe we're starting to turn on some of those unused parts of the brain. And according to yoga, they talk about the 1,000 petaled lotus. And some people say that's a metaphor for the brain, and that each little petal is a different ability. Like maybe one petal is clairvoyance, another petal is clairsentience, another petal is past life recall, another petal is healing abilities. And so that as our consciousness is opening and expanding, as we are activating some of these potentials in our mind, our range of what is included in normal for us gets bigger and bigger. And so that's why, getting back to your question, you have your awakening experience. That's just your first one. That it's like these petals are opening, your consciousness is opening, and you start having repeated experiences, perhaps the same type that you had first, but then you start having other types and
yes.
more types, so that you become like you and I. We are both multiple NDE and multiple STE experiencers.
Yeah.
And for us, paranormal is now normal.
True. It is. And I think some people might wanna know, how do I get to that stage? And I hear this a lot. Be involved with Spiritual Awakenings International. That'll help. That'll educate you. But do you have any advice for people that maybe they think they might have had some things happen in childhood and they'd like to look at that comfortably now, or that would like to be more spiritually awoken? Do you
Yeah.
have any recommendations?
Yeah, well, first off, I'd say come to our Spiritual Awakenings International Conference, June
Yeah.
11th and 12th, and come to the Childhood STE Experiencers panel. Tamara Caulder Richardson is going to be speaking in more detail about some of her experiences,
Mhm.
along with a couple other people who had very strong childhood STE experiences. And then there's going to be all types of STEs, spiritually transformative
Yep.
experiences, talked about there. So it's a great place to get a cram course. The second place
Right,
you can
right.
get a cram course is our Spiritual Awakenings International website. So that's
Here it is. It is.
www.spiritualawakeningsinternational.org.
It really is fabulous, the information on it. I've sent more people like, "What is this?" or "What do you think?" I said, "Look for yourself." And it's just amazing information on there.
Yeah, and I've taken all that information from my book, Touched by the Light. So if you think that you are going through a spiritual awakening and you want more depth than what you find on the Spiritual Awakenings International website, I recommend my book. It's mentioned on the website, but
Fabulous.
Touched by the Light, Exploring Spiritually Transformative Experiences. I talk about the whole range of spiritually transformative experiences, and I give case examples. There's over 100 case examples in the book. So a lot of people, like I think you had this, Tamara, you went through and went, oh, I didn't know there was a name for this. Yeah, I'm having this experience
I
too.
did. I'm glad you were so humble about it, because I was like, "Oh my god, I didn't know that, and I had that, and I didn't know that, and really?" And so I was excited because finally I had a name for it.
Yeah.
And it was really a relief, and it didn't just stay there. It began to open my eyes, and my spiritual journey unfolded even more. And then I'm recalling even more. So it's okay. A lot of people that have had experiences sometimes don't realize these things till later in life. They don't come out till later. And
Hmm.
I think it comes out when you're ready. When you're
Hmm.
ready to explore it, when you feel
Hmm.
safe. And that's
Hmm.
why you created this safe platform,
Hmm.
so people can comfortably look at these things without judgment, whether you have religion, no religion, wherever. If you're human, take a look at it. And
Yeah.
so the conference is going to be incredible. While I've got people here, before we say goodbye to everyone, I wanted to have you mention some of the kind of topics that are going to be covered in this conference. Sign up for this conference. It's free. It's awesome. Not only did I participate last year as a speaker, but I participated as a viewer, and it was very good. So tell us some of the people and the topics you're going to have.
Well, we're really delighted to have Betty Eady as opening our conference on Saturday. And you who don't know who she is, she's a real groundbreaker in the near-death experience field. She was the very first American woman to really go public about near-death experiences. And when you're the first one, it's never an easy road. That there are always going to be people that challenge you or don't believe you. So she did a tremendous amount of good in raising awareness globally. Her book, Embraced by the Light, has been published worldwide about near-death experiences. But we're not just having near-death experience talks, although we're going to have several people talking about their near-death experiences. We're also going to be having people talking about spiritual emergencies. When you get into a crisis or even end up in the psychiatric hospital after you've had a spiritual awakening. As I mentioned, we've talked a lot about the childhood STE experiencers panel. We're going to have the NDE Talking Dead panel that's going to be talking about NDEs and post-traumatic stress. Again, one of those topics that's very rarely talked about. We're going to have a fabulous STE researchers panel, including Mark Anthony. I don't know if any of you have heard him, but he's good. Fascinating, mesmerizing. So we're delighted that he's going to be speaking at our conference. Then we have two speakers that are going to be talking on Kundalini awakening for those people interested in Kundalini awakening. We're having another speaker talking on helping stuck souls cross over. So that should be very fascinating too.
Yeah.
After death communications is going to be another topic. So we have a whole spectrum of topics at Spiritual Awakenings International Conference. So I encourage everyone, come. It's
register down below. It's free. And I'm going to be on the childhood panel. And I think we've got two others. Who is Kirsty Salisbury?
Kirsty Salisbury from New Zealand, and Brian Sackett from Toronto, Canada. So we're going to have speakers from 3 countries. I want to point that out too. We have 30 speakers from 12 different countries. We're very proud of that. And Spiritual Awakenings International is truly an international network. We're proud to have subscribers in all 50 states of the United States. We're delighted of that. But we also have subscribers in 66 countries. And I'm just delighted that we're there. Anyone around the world can get some spiritual comfort and support. So we welcome anyone listening to this. Come to our Spiritual Awakenings International Conference, Saturday, June 11th, Sunday, June 12th. And particularly make sure you don't miss Tamara Caulder Richardson when she's going to be talking on the childhood STE experiencers panel.
Oh, thank you so much. And you're always a joy, and you're always welcome to be back in the Seeking Heaven channel.
Thank you, Tamara.
Oh, you really are a pioneer in the not only in the near-death experience, but the spiritually transformative experiences, which you've coined, but in Kundalinis. I mean, you truly are a pioneer in the spiritual world, and it is my honor to have you on the Seeking Heaven channel and to also assist you with Spiritual Awakenings International. I thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kason. Namaste.
Namaste.
Please subscribe, like, and make comments, and support this channel by becoming a member. Thank you for your continued support.